Hey guys, doing something a little out of the ordinary today. Most of you don't really know this, but ever since I made this channel, I wanted to be a review channel. I know it's kind of crazy, but you guys know the story. What ended up happening to my channel was a lot worse.
Whoa! 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 Holy!
Oh, thank you, Sly Cooper. I was working on them all night for you last night while I was finger popping myself.
So we're gonna open this up, and we have the same exact type of pizza.
I'm going back in time again. Whoa!
Hey guys, this is Blue of Blue Rush 1992. Last time we smoked weed in Silent Forest Zone 3 and 4, so now we're gonna do drugs in Sky Road Zone 1. Yeah! Butt sex! Butt sex! My god. This mod, man. On across world.
But screw that. People have wanted to know my true opinions over Sonic Generations for years now, after years of telling jokes and bashing the game. But to me, the only way I'm properly going to be able to do it is to make a review. Something I've been wanting to do since 2012, but I'm finally going to get to it. In fact, there's actually so much misinformation going on over my opinions over Sonic that I'm actually going to make it a series. I'm going to be calling it S-Rank, where I rank each and every single Sonic game available to me. Now let's begin with the game that started it all, that I'm finally going to get to, even though it's years old now. Let's get right into it. Sonic Generations. Sonic Generations released in 2011 to much critical acclaim. Seriously, 7s and 8s everywhere. Good for Sega, but does it stand the test of time? Was it simply a simple sell due to nostalgia appeal, or is it really good enough to be a standalone Sonic title? Let's find out. Sonic Generations. Wow, where do we even start? I guess we might as well go with probably its weakest point, that being the story. It all begins in Green Hill, actually. After beating Green Hill Zone, classic Sonic feels a tremor as he finishes the stage. Thinking nothing of it, he continues running until a purple creature emerges from a portal high in the sky, sending a shockwave across Green Hill as classic Sonic is left there staring. I guess we cut to sometime later, when all of Sonic's friends decide to throw him a surprise birthday party, which doesn't end up being a surprise for long as Sonic deducts exactly what's going on as soon as he arrives. After the party begins, out of nowhere a purple vortex appears, sending a huge gust of wind which is sent towards Sonic and the gang. As a purple monster emerges from the portal, it opens up several smaller portals which immediately begin to suck up Sonic's friends. Sonic, obviously not overjoyed that his friends are essentially being kidnapped, decides to attack the monster and is completely overpowered, one-shotted, and defeated. As Tails is the last person to be sucked in, we cut to an unconscious Sonic laying on the ground. Sonic later wakes up in a world without color, life, or any sort of energy to it. He runs towards Green Hill and thus begins the massive backseat in story. Seriously, it's like the writers of this game only kind of try to make the opening of the game sort of interesting. Wanna know what I'm talking about? Let's continue. After going through Green Hill, Sonic restores enough something to free Tails from his discolored prison. And let's just copy paste that 8 more times because the story becomes extremely formulaic after this. Beat 2 stages, free one of Sonic's many friends, beat the boss at the end of the era, and that's it. Which, yeah, it's a Sonic game. The plot doesn't need to be the most intellectual piece of literature out there, but they certainly could have done better than this. Especially since most of the cutscenes after the opening are 20-second cutscenes where you save Sonic's friends, they say a sentence to you, and then it's on to the next stage. These cutscenes are incredibly awkward since it's an extremely one-sided conversation, as Sonic's friends say one sentence only for Sonic to respond with a simple smirk or thumbs up, which to me I find hilarious for probably all the wrong reasons. As for the rest of the story, it consists of 3-minute cutscenes that happen every now and then, which focus on classic and modern versions of Sonic and Tails talking about how to fix time. Which, by the way, is solved by Sonic going fast.
When the Sonics accelerate through time, they fix space, returning color and life.
Yeah, going fast fixes time apparently. Which makes no sense, but I'm not even gonna try to comprehend what the slice of white bread story is trying to give me as a reason to how this fixes time. This story, if you can call it that, is concluded by Sonic confronting the purple monster, which is actually called Time Eater. Did I mention its name before? Probably not, but that name is actually retarded. Anyway, both Sonics finally arrive to face the Time Eater, which is, surprise surprise, controlled by Eggman. But not one Eggman, but 2, which sound no different at all from each other for some reason. I know Mike Pollock obviously voices both, but really? He couldn't at least try to make them sound a little different? It's a small nitpick, I know, but Kate Higgins did a great job voicing classic and modern Tails, clearly differentiating the two. But it just seems like Mike Pollock didn't even try to make them sound at least kind of different from each other when voicing modern and classic Eggman. Either way, I couldn't care less, I guess. Small rant over. Let's get back into the story. Both Sonics are defeated, only for Sonic's friends to appear out of nowhere to give him moral support. By the way, I love how Eggman calls Sonic's friends insignificant. In fact, it kind of reminds me of someone else. Anyway, through the real superpower of working with a past version of yourself, both modern and classic Sonic go super, defeat the Time Eater, and are both sent back to the present just in time for Modern to say goodbye to his past self with one of the biggest lies in gaming history. Oh, you poor fool, you have no idea. Classic Sonic is sent back in time, the camera pans up to the skies, and the credits roll, and wow, that was the story. Overall, I'm not a big fan of the story, but does it really affect my experience of the title? I guess not much, considering the story is only 20 minutes? What the fuck? Even Colors has a longer story than this. Oh well, it's clear that this story was very lazily put together. I think it's evident since in this game there are these very few instances where Sonic and Tails talk about Chemical Plant and Green Hill respectively. It's very strange to see this since this only happens twice. I feel like this game's story was originally going to be a lot bigger, but for some reason, time constraints or not, Generations doesn't seem to have a complete story. It just seems incredibly rushed and unfinished. While the story isn't anything to write home about, at least now we have that part out of the way. So let's finally talk about the actual meat of the game, the gameplay. Sonic Generations gameplay-wise is the most recent iteration, that's not an unreleased game, of the boost gameplay established in 2008. And gameplay-wise, it's probably one of the most solid gameplay experiences I've had in a Sonic game. While Sonic can't run in a circle as easily as I'd like him to, and he can be very stiff when trying to turn, Modern Sonic is still the best evolution in terms of the Sonic Unleashed gameplay. He doesn't accelerate to 1,000,000 miles per hour in a second, and he does have the homing attack back to the A button instead of the X button. Speaking of which, I have no idea why that change was made of all things. It just felt so cluttered and unnecessary. Ugh. In terms of gameplay, not much has changed for Modern Sonic, which I guess I'm okay with, except for one part of his gameplay, and that's his 2D sections. While Unleashed and Colors had 2D sections to, in a way, pay homage to the classic Sonic of old, in this game we actually do have the original 2D Sonic back, which makes me wonder why 2D sections are still a thing considering we already have fully 2D levels. But I guess it can't be helped. Anyway, as I stated earlier, the gimmick of this game is that we don't just play as the newer Modern Sonic, but also get to play as Classic Sonic. Yeah, the actual Classic Sonic from the original games. I guess Iizuka backtracked hard as fuck on the whole Modern Sonic's design is what Classic Sonic would look like in 3D nonsense. Which even today, that was honestly the dumbest thing I've heard come from that dude's mouth, and he said other dumb stuff too, like fans don't want to play as Sonic's friends anymore, which, come on Iizuka, bring back the multiple characters. And by multiple characters, I'm not talking about versions of Sonic or DeviantArt rejects. Or black and red versions of Sonic. Back to the game, I'm just gonna drop this opinion right here. Classic Sonic is honestly the worst of the two gameplay styles, which even I'm surprised that's what I truly think about Classic Sonic's gameplay. Considering how linear modern Sonic stages were before Generations, I honestly expected Classic Sonic to be the best part of Generations, and since the game dropped, I'm generally surprised and upset that Classic Sonic's gameplay wasn't as good as everyone, including me, thought it would be. Explaining why I don't like Classic Sonic's gameplay in Generations is simple. It's not Classic Sonic. Sonic himself feels extremely heavy at all times, and he's very stiff. Modern Sonic has this problem too, but at least he has his air dash to help him traverse and give him that little extra distance. But when it comes to Classic Sonic, he's all on his own, using his jump and momentum to go across stages, which isn't helped by his sluggish acceleration. And here's the main issue I find with Classic Sonic: the physics. Why ruin the most important thing to Classic Sonic? Since the very beginning, the one thing that made Classic Sonic different from other platformers was the use of physics and momentum to gain speed and finish stages as fast as possible. That is not the case at all here. Physics are almost non-existent with Classic Sonic, and he is barely affected by different types of terrain. I think it also doesn't help that the roll that's been in all of the Classic Sonic games that was used as an alternative method to gain speed is absolutely useless. While the physics themselves aren't nearly as bad as Sonic 4 and his Spider-Man-esque abilities, honestly, Generations does get rather close when it comes to janky physics and almost no speed gained when rolling down a hill. I guess it doesn't really matter now, considering the spin dash has been buffed up significantly, almost to the point of being borderline overpowered. I mean, damn, they really powered this thing up. It's extremely fast, allows for you to travel extremely far on one charge without Sonic uncurling, and release this thing on an incline and watch Sonic fly across stages, which honestly, I'm okay with. While this spin dash is extremely powerful, I think it fits a whole lot more for the stages in Generations. And I can't exactly explain why. Maybe because everything is extremely huge in Generations for some reason. Seriously, objects such as loops and corkscrews are very big in comparison to Sonic. Maybe it's the fact that the camera is further away from Sonic, but honestly, if it weren't for the new spin dash, I think it would be a whole lot harder to traverse in stages, especially since at times the spin dash is necessary to progress. It's very odd to see the spin dash being used in this way, as Sonic has always been able to gain the speed on his own 2 feet to go through loops. The spin dash was never required to beat the Sonic games, but for some reason Sega decided to design the levels in such a way that unless Sonic has a booster to propel him forward, he never seems to be able to reach the speeds to go through the now massive loops and structures. Anyway, let's move on to the actual levels in the game. Well, in terms of how this game is structured, you have it all split into 3 eras. The classic era containing stages such as Green Hill, Chemical Plant, and Sky Sanctuary. The Dreamcast era that consists of Speed Highway, City Escape, and Seaside Hill. That's not a Dreamcast game. Come on guys, where's the Sonic Shuffle love at? And finally, the modern era, which has Crisis City, Rooftop Run, and Planet Wisp. Each stage has its own modern and classic Sonic levels for each location, which basically means the game has 2 stages to accurately portray the gimmicks presented in the level, but also manage to represent the game the level came from. And I've gotta say, they didn't do too bad of a job when it came to that. Stages like Green Hill accurately portray the tropes presented from the beginning levels of Sonic, as well as keep the familiar locations and gimmicks of Green Hill Zone. Everything is here, from those checkerboard rocks, those tree stump bridges, and that alternating patterned grass. While Green Hill is a very exhausting stage to go through after so many iterations, especially Sonic Forces, for the 20th anniversary game Generations is, I'll excuse it. Oh! And the classic Sonic stage also manages to include the very first part of the original Green Hill as the very beginning of this stage, while keeping the rest of the stage mainly original level design, with some Emerald Hill references, such as the corkscrews, all while focusing more on the Sonic 3 Knuckles system of the higher, middle, and lower paths. Overall, it's a good first stage. It's short, it's easy, but it still manages to add multiple ways of reaching the goal, with the use of different paths that frequently interconnect. Meanwhile, the modern Sonic section of the stage is not that good. Full of linear paths, straight lines, and heavily automated sections and 2D sequences, which are extremely unnecessary. All of these bring back everything I don't like about the boost formula. Sure, it's the first stage and I get it. Sega wants us to go fast, but considering how later stages improve upon the formula when it comes to balancing speed with platforming as well as exploration, it just makes Green Hill Modern look worse in comparison. In fact, it seems like this stage was probably one of the first stages in development before they learned how to properly use Sonic in 3D. I find that to be a big issue when it comes to this game's level design. Sega has so many interesting concepts in its level design, but they just have to water it down with linearity, and an issue that has plagued modern Sonic games for years, and Sega for some reason still doesn't know how to get rid of this nasty habit. Automation. Seriously, springs, speed boosters sprinkled all over the stage, which I can understand why for modern Sonic. To an extent. In a 3D environment, you do need a sense of automation to help casual players along the stage, which is something that can't be helped, but what I don't like is that this sort of level design carried itself over to classic Sonic as well, even though the original classics had little to no automation in the games. There were those rare sections where a red spring or booster helped you along when you had to be going a certain speed, but the way how they added these in the classic Sonic stages just seems so unnecessary. Even more so since classic Sonic does have his super powerful spin dash now. I have found so many unnecessary sections of adding speed boosters in these stages, as if players don't know how to hold right when they need to. Why was there a speed booster there? Not only was I going fast enough down the slope to reach the height I needed to, but even if my current speed wasn't enough, why is that booster there? If only there was some ability Sonic had that allowed him to gain speed when he needs it. It's dumb level design like that which makes me dislike Generations a whole lot more when I compare it to Mania. The Mania team knew what great level design was, and it didn't involve dumbing itself down by adding tons of automation to hold the player's hand. When I first played the stage, I thought the entire game would be like this. I've never been so happy to be wrong. Later stages do manage to improve upon the original formula, and the stages do get bigger and more complex as you progress through the game, which is rather easy to do with S ranks in this game. Of course, the ranking system returns as it always does in 3D games, although now it's ridiculously easy. Like, very, very easy. It's speed-based, meaning that finishing the stage as fast as possible lands you the best rank, which I'm still very indifferent about on whether such a system is good or bad. In one way, it's Sonic, so you would assume speed would be the best way to get the best rank. Although, I feel like games such as Unleashed that combines score, time, and rings as a factor was a much better way of calculating how well the player actually performed. I just feel like Generations' ranking system is a little bit too lenient. Like the fact that I screwed around for 7 minutes in Rooftop Run and got a B. A B. In Unleashed, that would probably get me a C. And don't even ask me about SA2 and its brutal ranking system. And really, Sega? 7 minutes in Planet Wisp and I still get an S rank? In short, the ranking system is very easy, and I'm glad games like Forces fixed that. Anyway, back to my analysis on the stages. When it comes to Chemical Plant, the classic Chemical Plant stage was rather bland to me. Just bland, nothing outstanding or bad, it's just there. In fact, it's probably my least played stage alongside Planet Wisp, which we'll get to later, much later. But in terms of Chemical Plant Modern, it does something I never expected Sonic Team to do, and that's add multiple hidden pathways that encourage curiosity and exploration. For example, at the beginning of the stage, the tubes you actually run beside are actual objects that you can actually run on to reach alternate paths and goodies. It doesn't stop there with the improvements in level design either, as stages like Sky Sanctuary Modern and Classic manage to be some of the best stages in the game, by being very exploration based and filled with tons of areas and alternate paths. This is all used to a great effect in modern Sonic stage, using several big 3D areas to give the player more freedom than ever before in a modern Sonic game. And as for classic Sonic stage, several elements like switching between the foreground and background and using several interconnecting paths and layers all makes a completely 2D stage really pop and make it seem to be one part of an interconnecting world, instead of looking like a completely flat area. That's actually something I can praise Generations in its entirety. While the game does have a lot of 2D segments, the 2D sections never appear flat. Its use of foreground elements and its unique and great backgrounds make the stages seem full of life. Anyway, on to the Dreamcast era, which honestly I have to say is the best part of the game. I can't put my finger on it, but the fact that Sega revisited and remastered the energetic, adventurous, and exciting tones of the adventure games gives the Dreamcast era stages such a sense of nostalgia and wonder. The Dreamcast era was a new time for Sonic, and it introduced so many people to the franchise. And I have to say, Speed Highway Classic and Modern definitely give off that adventure vibe, as well as have that familiar high-speed adrenaline feel of the original stage. Cinematic moments included, even the famous skyscraper rundown, though I'm disappointed both modern and classic versions of the stage completely ignore the At Dawn section, which is so strange to me. The stage does transition from a night to a dawn skyline, but it's not the same. Now, City Escape. Not only did this stage have an amazing techno remix playing, but it put classic Sonic in this adventure setting, which is just so bizarre yet awesome at the same time, with extra elements such as the gun truck chasing Sonic throughout the whole stage instead of just, one section. And don't even get me started on the modern stage. New remix, better board physics, and a near perfect remaster of City Escape in HD with open spaces, exploration, fun platforming segments, and guess what? Only one 2D section. And that's how it should be made, Sega. Well, no, there should be no 2D sections at all, but baby steps. But even after everything I previously mentioned, City Escape pales in comparison to the actual best stage in the game, Seaside Hill. Giant open spaces, and fun and interesting level design that rivals stages from both the classic and Dreamcast games, with tons of paths and its use of layering with background and foreground elements to make the stage look absolutely beautiful. Seaside Hill Modern is where it's at though, from its use of great level design that encourages players to try to find new paths and secrets, even to the point of allowing you to skip an entire 2D section by going under a loop and finding a cannon that allows you to bypass that entire section, which was actually really fucking clever. Sonic Team didn't just succeed in recreating Seaside Hill, but also several parts of Ocean Palace, even including some of the original track in this new remix. There's just so much right with this stage that keeps me coming back for more. And I could go on for much longer, but I'd rather not focus on simply one stage. I still have an entire era to go through. And unfortunately, it kind of all goes downhill from here. All with the introduction of the modern era, starting with Crisis City. And no, it's not cause 06 killed the franchise and made several people give up on Sonic and made the critics hate every single release. Just something seems so right with the Dreamcast era. It's like they nailed the formula, but for some reason the stages from the modern era don't give off that vibe as well as the Dreamcast era recreations did. Sure, the stages are okay, but the game doesn't present another stage as good as the Dreamcast era in this game. Classic Sonic's Crisis City stage was just super bland to me. It tries to be more interesting by focusing on a fire tornado, which halts your progress a little bit and even takes away the goal ring from you, but that just doesn't save the game for me. Oddly enough, I don't have much to say about this stage. The only thing I can think about is that I almost never return to it, and that's about it. And modern Sonic stage, while better than classic, and it does have its own good 3D platforming sections, there just isn't enough going on in this stage for me to enjoy it, as a lot of the stage is filled with unnecessary 2D sections, which honestly make me want to play the original Crisis City more than this recreation. This stage I don't find bad, but it's not a stage I'll always go back to. Rooftop Run, it's really hit or miss for me. The classic Sonic version of the stage is a lot better as it recreates Rooftop Run in a different but very likable way, using several landmark locations from the stage, incorporating some elements of the Spogonia hub world, to even including some Werehog sections. And hey, that little flying battery nod of the battleship, that was cool. Now, if only we could have controlled Sonic while he was in the battleship, instead of the camera just panning away and Sonic automatically going through it. Do you realize how cool it would have been? They even could have used the Flying Battery Zone remix they made for this game as well. Oh well, it's a missed opportunity. And unfortunately, Generations is used to having those. But we'll save that for later. And as for the modern Sonic part, it sucks. It's pretty much the exact same stage from Unleashed, except the set pieces are switched around, and it's shorter. Going from the original 5-minute stage to a 3-minute one just seems like a huge downgrade, and overall it's not even close to the original in any sort of way. Which honestly surprised me. I thought if Sega were to remaster any stage correctly in the Boost gameplay, it would be the stages from the games that actually use the same gameplay style. But even then, none of this compares to the absolute worst stage in the game, Planet Wisp. Holy hell, is this stage just bad. What happened, guys? Planet Wisp was one of the best stages in Colors, although I definitely would have preferred Aquarium Park. Planet Wisp was unique, had great platforming and 3D sections, which is rare for Colors, but it's all gone out the window with this mess of a stage. First off, I have to say, the first 3D section in Planet Wisp Modern is beautiful, more open than even Seaside Hill, and it definitely was helped by the HD graphics upgrade. The forest opening section had great level design for the Boost gameplay. Too bad it only lasted about 40 seconds because the rest of the stage is the slow, boring, generic climb up a tower. And yeah, Sega, I get it, the tower was in quite a few acts of Planet Wisp. But that doesn't mean you combine all the tower sections into one. This stage is everything a Boost stage shouldn't be. Every other stage did a better job than this one. And yet we aren't even at the very worst this game has to offer. Yeah, listen to that terrible music. Enjoy that terrible level design, which basically forces you to slow down and avoid all the enemies, saws, missiles, and everything the stage decides to throw at you. And what's that? You actually like the Planet Wisp remix? Well, that doesn't mean shit, as you're gonna be in the Spike Wisp mode hearing do 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 the entire time. It's just bad. And it's very disappointing that this game has to end with a sour taste in our mouths with this poorly made final stage. Overall, I have to say, a lot of these stages do represent the game they came from fairly accurately. Except one certain stage. Although, something about the number of levels we did get in this game does feel a little bit off. At the time this game got released, Sonic had 20 years of games to be remastered as stages and we only get 9? I get that this decision was probably made for time, but I feel that one more stage per era would have felt way better. I don't like how we did get a pretty small selection of stages, and I feel like Sega knew we would be disappointed. That's why I do appreciate the several references and callbacks they did do to other recognizable Sonic stages, like the reference to the water section in Hydro City Zone, the top spinner from Marble Garden, and the flying battery zone reference in Rooftop Run. There's probably a whole lot more, but those are probably the most obvious references I can remember off the top of my head. Well, excluding the bosses, of course. Oh yeah, I kinda skipped over them entirely. Whoops. Well, it wouldn't be a Sonic game without its share of boss battles, which bring back several recognizable bosses from important times in Sonic history, such as the Death Egg Robot from Sonic 2, which is a whole lot easier due to actually having rings now. Perfect Chaos from Sonic Adventure, which in my opinion is probably my favorite boss, due to how well they reimagined it. They reimagined it with proper fun, level design, and essentially making the boss an extra modern Sonic level of sorts. And of course we can't forget the Egg Dragoon, which is a very weird choice considering the other two bosses were final bosses of their respective games, but Egg Dragoon wasn't a final boss, Dark Gaia was. I guess Sega didn't want to bother with recreating a huge demon monster in the core of an Earth along with a Megazord formed out of Gaia temples. Maybe that was pushing it a little too far. Anyway, each era also had its own many bosses in the form of rivals. Metal Sonic, Shadow, and Silver all appear in this game with faithful adaptations of their boss battles with some minor alterations. For example, you actually fight Metal Sonic instead of having to race him, and instead of Soliana, Silver's boss battle takes place in Crisis City. But if there's one boss I have to complain about, it's the Time Eater. Yeah, mainstream opinion, but really, what the fuck was going on when they programmed this boss battle? Honestly, even to this day, I still don't know what exactly is going on when I fight him. Stuff just happens. You have to reach the core of the Time Eater to damage him. But I swear it's random when the game lets you damage him at all. Sometimes I'm able to catch up to the Time Eater pretty easily, getting essentially a free hit. But other times, it's impossible to catch up to the Time Eater. Plus, for some reason, you have this useless move where you press A and the alternate Sonic will charge up and make this noise. Releasing the button will, I guess, activate it, but I swear all it does is make you watch classic Sonic bounce around everywhere. Plus, Sonic's friends never shut up. From beginning to end, you hear,
"We're gonna win this one together!"
It's a warping arm attack! Charge in to help the other Sonic! Sonic can't help Sonic! With the Y this one!
Charge in to help the other Sonic!
Sonic!
That looks like a shot!
the entire time. Like, damn, just let me save all of time and space in peace. As for all the other bosses and generations, Sonic Team actually did do a great job in recreating them, sticking with the main ideas and concepts from the originals, with improvements made to certain ones that overall make the experience much better. And of course, the familiar remixes that bring back that sense of nostalgia of going through Sonic's past experiences. Oh yeah, this game has music. Really good music. I can't believe I was gonna skip past this game's music. I promise I won't go into too much detail, but I will say this, the game does a great job reimagining these tracks in these new stages, as well as remixing several other and unfamiliar tracks from previous Sonic games. Each music track is pretty fitting for each stage, except for a select few, but for the most part, Generations has a great soundtrack. It manages to remix levels and past themes in such a way that while it is a new composition, still invokes that feeling of familiarity that is needed for a game that is essentially nostalgia overload. I would say which tracks are my favorite, but I might save that for some other time. But now, we are through talking about the main game. Now it's time to talk about all the post-game content or additional content. Well, for starters, there are collectibles, which are in the form of red rings, which return from Sonic Colors. They reward you with skills if you find them all on a certain level, but also music and concept art as well. But collecting them all is maybe an extra 30 minutes to an hour at the very most. There has to be something else to do, something that doesn't involve replaying stages, which introduces us to missions. Sonic Generations, while having a limited selection of stages, does at least have some form of extra content in the form of missions. 90 missions in total, 45 for Modern and 45 for Classic, which is a staggering amount of missions to complete. One thing I do have to say is that I'm glad the game doesn't force you to play even remotely close to the 90 missions available. In fact, you only have to beat about 3 missions per era, which means 9 in total for game completion. And it's clear Sega only planned for most to only complete 9 missions. Because while I do appreciate the amount of variety, it's clear that a lot of these missions lack polish. These missions can range from a simple doppelganger mission, which is essentially another run through of the stage, and they're ridiculously easy. Look at this, it's not even remotely fair. Other missions include using items to complete a modified version of the stage, or a mission using one of Sonic's friends to aid you across the stage. There are other goals and missions as well, but I'd rather not focus too much on the missions themselves. While I originally did hate the missions a lot before this most recent playthrough for this review, getting to play this game in its entirety again made me see that while most of these missions are utter gimmicky garbage, there are some really good ones. Some that I completely forgot about till now. Some of my favorite missions are mainly modern Sonic missions, such as Terror from the Deep, where it's essentially a mini-stage of some sort where you run away from a giant chopper, or Surf, Sea, and Sand, and Action Master, and Rooftop Run Grind, which, come on, it's Sonic on a skateboard, which is always cool. Well, almost always. Classic Sonic also does have some rather nice missions, mainly due to the several callbacks they managed to bring back in these missions, such as flying with Tails in Sonic 3, and the juggling goalposts, which weren't elements in Generations itself, but I'm glad Sega tried to bring these elements back in some sort of way in this game. One thing all the missions I do like share in common is that those missions don't really act like missions, but they function more like extra stages. Kind of similar to Unleashed and its extra stages. It makes me wonder why we have so many missions when Sega could have put more time into making more stages instead of making 90 missions. At least one more stage per era. Oh well. While I do have plenty of missions I do like, there seems to be a bad one for each mission I enjoy. For example, fuck the Switcheroo mission, fuck the 4-star cannon mission, and especially fuck S-ranking the balloon mission. The missions in Generations were never difficult, but more than half of them are completely gimmicky, and it's clear that not everything was 100% tested, which I feel is a reason why we could have gotten more stages instead of the amount of missions we did get. While the missions in Generations are a distraction and aren't required at all to beat the game, it's just kind of annoying having to go through these stages again with sometimes no significant changes with an unfinished, glitchy gimmick thrown in the mix. Cause, come on, the Vector mission in Classic Crisis City works fine. It's fun enough, but since Classic Sonic Spin Dash is so overpowered, I hardly found any use to use Vector at all, considering I skipped a huge portion of the mission with a properly timed Spin Dash jump. Another example of a mission that just doesn't work is the Topsy-Turvy mission in Sky Sanctuary, where you have to race Amy with a marble garden spinner, which just doesn't work as much as I'd like it to, because the spinner controls are god-awful, and don't even get me started on the Espio mission in Seaside Hill. That last wall can actually go fuck itself. The missions in Generations aren't the worst thing that happened in the franchise, not even close. But just seeing the amount of missions and the time it took to make these missions, it really just makes me wish Sega took the Sonic Unleashed approach and instead made more acts for the stages, or at least make like the 1-2 or 2-2 stages instead, which were essentially hard mode versions of the stages. And with that, I think I'm done with post-game content. Aside from a half-baked customizable skill system, there isn't much Generations has to offer after the main game is done. As honestly, Generations' main story could be beaten in about 2 hours. 100% maybe 3 to 4 hours. While Sonic games have been getting a lot shorter lately, I feel like 2 hours is really bad in terms of what Sega can offer the player as an experience. And now we have hit the final assortment of words for this review, otherwise known as a conclusion of some sorts. Generations has its good moments and its bad moments. So now, the big question is brought to attention. What do I truly think about this game? Do I truly hate this game as much as I say I do? Is this game actually a gem that I enjoy? Is Generations worthy of all those 7s and 8s? Well, the answer's no. Personally to me, while Generations has so much going on and had so much potential and ambition, it just fell flat in so many areas, and that was mainly in the amount of content we did get. A rushed story, few stages, loads of unnecessary gimmicky missions. It's a chore for me to revisit Generations because every time I go back, I get enjoyment out of it for maybe 5 minutes before I realize there isn't much that brings me back to this game. While yes, there are some good stages in here, there were also plenty good stages in Unleashed, and there were even more stages in Unleashed, and they were longer too. I just can't help the feeling that this game was rushed, very similarly to how other Sonic Anniversary games were rushed in the past. I feel like they rushed this title, but they got lucky. On the surface, and to the general audience, it doesn't look like this game is rushed. But I can almost guarantee Generations was rushed to some extent. Sega knows Generations did not have the longest development cycle either, which is why Sega's not trying to make a mistake with Forces. Generations, while fun, has little for the player to do, and with the shorter levels, it makes the game seem even smaller than it really is. Just the more I look at Generations, the more I see how Mania did the exact same thing, but better. It had the classic Sonic physics again, and most importantly, it felt and looked like a true successor to the classics in 2017. Even adding Tails and Knuckles into the mix as characters was something Generations could not give us. While Generations for the standards of 2011 was good, in 2017 it's clear the game hasn't aged that well. In fact, most of what had me replaying this game over and over again were the PC mods. The modding scene for Generations PC is huge, one of the biggest in terms of Sonic. In fact, the PC version is the definitive version of Generations, with a frame rate Capcom allowing for silky, smooth 60 FPS gameplay. While the modding scene for the PC version is not as active as it once was, if you're new to Generations on PC, I suggest you give it a try. There are so many good mods to find and play on the internet, free of charge, and it's just sad that instead of proper DLC, we get a boring casino pinball game that doesn't play remotely like Sonic. But for free, we get stage edits, character mods with unique abilities, stage ports, original stages, and almost entire games being ported into Generations. It's the modding community, in my opinion, that kills and saves this game. Because with mods, it adds so much free content to extend playtime, which is a great thing that the Generations PC modding community managed to pull off. Unfortunately, the reason why mods kill this game is in its very name, the Generations PC modding community. All mods are PC exclusive, meaning people who got this game on Xbox 360 or PS3 were left with whatever Generations had to offer as its own standalone game. which after coming from all the different possibilities and characters and stage mods, Generations on console is just very bland. While there are some good mechanics and features Generations offered at the time of release, it hasn't really aged that well since now we already got Sonic Mania, which gave us a clean and authentic classic Sonic experience, and the soon-to-be-released Sonic Forces, which is taking the original Generations template, but adding on to a few rehashes and more gameplay styles. The game can only be considerably better when playing the PC version, due to the amount of mods fans have added to the game, but as a standalone title, as a Sonic game, I have to say it's just bland. And for the very first Sonic game to be featured in S rank, I'm actually going to be doing something a little different for this first review, and this review only. I'm going to give it 2 ranks. One for the superior PC version, which massively extends gameplay, and another for the bland console version. And here it is, the moment of truth. Generations on consoles gets a D. It had potential, but it didn't capitalize on just the amount of potential this game could have had. And for the much better PC version, I'm giving it a C. The smooth frame rate and mod support helped the PC version appear a whole lot better, but in the end, it's only the mods making the game better, so it can't rank the PC version any higher than a C due to the fans contributing to the PC version's superiority. Either way, we already had Mania come out with great success. Now all we have to do is wait on Sonic Forces to hopefully keep Sonic's momentum going. And with that, I'm done. I'm done with this review. I've been wanting to do this since 2012, you can believe that. And it's finally over. Even though I'm really late to the party and all that sort of stuff, I know Generations is a very old game, I'm glad I waited. I think it's better that I've had time to simmer down and not let my initial impressions and opinions blind me and censor me from this game's many positives and negatives. This is a very new style for me, so I hope you guys have appreciated this video. You know what? I should probably check the comments right now! You're trash, go kill yourself, all your vids are crap, and go outside, bloody mate. Wow, this sucks. How do you even sleep at night knowing you made this video? Go outside and stay there. I would say go outside, but that wouldn't be rude enough, so I'll say go outside, get hit by a bus, and get bitten by a snake. Dislike on this video. Why don't you go outside for once in your life and actually do something, you piece of shit Sonic fan? You're as dumb as Takashi Iizuka. Your content is like my father, a piece of shit. You have a small dick.
Fuck Sonic! Fuck all the Sonic bullshit! What the fuck? All I get is hate, and everyone else just tells me to go outside! What the fuck?
Go outside? I could do that. It's beautiful.